What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football, and today we are breaking down Wake Forest ahead of the 2025 season. If you like this content, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, or even a comment. All of those things help a small channel like this a ton. If you've done any of them, thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. For today's video, we will briefly take a look back at Wake Forest last year. Then we'll talk transfers, additions, departures, everything ahead of this upcoming season, schedule, games, what to expect. So here are last year's efficiency metrics. Let's take a look at Wake Forest. Offense was 67th. That is slightly above average. Defense was 59th, slightly above average. The pass game was actually a bit shocking for Wake Forest. They finished 55th. Their receivers were pretty good. Most of them are on other teams now with the new coaching staff and everything that we'll get into. But this was a pretty good offense. They had an offensive line ranked in the top 35, both pass blocking and run blocking. Their rushing efficiency wasn't fantastic, partially because they had a statute quarterback. But, I mean, this offense actually moved the ball better than I thought they were going to in efficiency metrics. Defense, above average basically everywhere except pass rush, where they ranked 110th. That unit was 59th overall. It definitely kept them in games. And their special teams was 59th. Overall, this was actually a pretty impressive unit. So when you see them fire their coaching staff and then head over to a new unit, that's not the most surprising considering what Wake Forest actually put on the field in terms of results. They were 4-8. A team with this kind of efficiency metrics should not be 4-8. Now, they had a lot of single-digit losses. They lose to Virginia by a point. They lose to Louisiana by 3 points, which is kind of inexcusable. You lose to Cal by 10 towards the end of the year, North Carolina by 7, Duke by 6. There's a lot of single-digit losses that if you flip a couple of those, maybe the previous staff is still in business here. But you move to Jake Dickert. He's been very impressive, former Washington State head coach. His record there was 23-20. But that program was in the woods a little bit after the Rolovich stuff. He comes in after being the DC, and he does turn them around. Their better seasons were towards the end of his tenure. They were 8-5 last year. This team beat Texas Tech. Now, that was a hurt Texas Tech, but still, you beat a Power 4 Big 12 team. They also smashed Hawaii, Utah State. The main concern you have with Washington State are the single-digit wins. Yes, they had a single-digit win over Washington, which is fantastic, but they also beat San Jose State by 2 points, Fresno State by 8 points, San Diego State by 3 points. Those are teams in the Mountain West that were middling to below average. As for losses, you got blown out by Boise State. They lost by 3 to New Mexico. They lost by 3 to Oregon State, and they lost by 1 to Wyoming. That's a lot of single-digit losses, and the best team in your conference, I guess we'll call it conference because Washington State basically played a Mountain West schedule. Boise State, they got smashed. They also got smashed by Syracuse in the bowl game. So it's kind of still a little bit of a question with Jake Dickert. I do think he firmly turned that program around, but now he's taking kind of a hard job and one that is in the P4 and firmly so. Who else is on this staff? Rob Ezel comes over as OC. He coordinated that offense in South Alabama last year. They passed 47% of the time, 76th in plays per game, but man, that was an elite offense. They were towards the top of the country in total scoring. And their run game was dynamic. It featured plenty of QB runs with Gio Lopez. That's going to be a focal point of this offense, as it was last year with Washington State, where you had, Jake Dickert. He's a defensive guy, but he oversaw, the Arbuckle and John Mateer situation, which was fantastic. Defensive coordinator is Scotty Hazelton. He was on the Texas staff last year as an assistant, but he previously coordinated Michigan State's defense from 2020 to 2023. Those units were up and down. So I don't know what we get with Scotty Hazelton. He has his supporters. I think I'm a little more excited about the offensive side with Rob Ezel. But overall, like Dickert, like Ezel, not sure on Hazelton. We shall see. Let's take a look at talent acquisition and retention. Obviously, a little nuance with the new staff. I think it will get better with time. This was not the best team in terms of recruiting. They were always able to grab a couple players at the top of their classes that were elite recruits. Couple 4-stars here and there, generally playing the skill positions, the receiver positions. We'll talk about some of them like Mays and Claiborne. These are former 4-stars. So it's not that the cupboard is bare for Wake Forest. They just don't have the depth of some other classes in the ACC. And overall, I think this will improve with Dicker. He has been awesome at identifying talent. And their transfer class is 46. That is the highest transfer class they brought in the last 3 years. Retention will be better too. Even the incoming freshman class, it's only at 91%. That's because of the coaching staff change. Nothing Dicker did. He's been great with retention so far. So expecting Wake Forest to improve with time. Let's take a look at the roster. Here is our data usage tool. You can find this in the Discord below if you like, but basically we're just trying to project the depth chart. Transfers are in yellow. Then we have their year in school, followed by how many snaps they played the last 2 years, what recruit they were in terms of a star ranking. Then we have a value score. This value score basically takes a look at your recruitment first. Then the more snaps you play, the less it looks at that recruiting, the more it just looks at on-field play. And what we're trying to do is give you a score where 50 would be an average player. So it scales up above that, towards 100, you get to your elite All-Americans and so forth. That's what we're trying to capture. So with quarterback, they bring in Robbie Ashford, they bring in Deshaun Purdy. Ashford, he's a former 4-star. He's been all over the place now. Played with Auburn, played with South Carolina. He's 6'2", 220. The most we saw of him was in 2022. That year, he played quite a bit, started for Auburn. His career completion percentage is 52%, 6.7 yards per attempt, 11 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 15 big-time throws, 20 turnover-worthy plays. The arm talent is lackluster, but mobility is strong. 1,154 yards, that's 4.8 yards per carry while taking 34 sacks. That's a 21.5% sack or pressure to sack ratio. Not great. But he does some things that work well in this offense. He's just not quite as developed as a passer, which is going to limit him. If you need Ashford to start, he can do it, and he can produce enough on the ground to have a functional offense. I'm not sure it's elite. Behind him, Purdy's a really hard guy to evaluate. So he comes over from Charlotte. This is now his sophomore season. He was thrown into the fire immediately. Now, Purdy has a lot to like. He's 6'4", 228. He completed 50% of his passes for 1,800 yards. That was 9 yards per attempt. So immediately, some incongruencies with that completion percentage is low. But then you see, okay, he must have been attempting some deep downfield passes to get 9 yards per attempt. He had 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 24 big-time throws, 20 turnover-worthy plays. Now he had a negative 130 rushing yards because he took 23 sacks. That was a 26% pressure to sack ratio. He needs to improve that. With that said, Charlotte had one of the highest rates of quick pressure in the country. So you're throwing a freshman into the fire behind an offensive line that's allowing pressure quickly. He managed that pretty well for the most part. But those sacks are part of the reason you see his efficiency numbers drawn all the way down. You see his turnover-worthy plays up at 20. It was a bad situation. So when you look at this 34.2 player rating for Purdy, I think there are some contextual factors to that Charlotte offense that need to be considered. If I were doing this by hand, I would have him higher. But this is a mathematical model that does this. I would be a little more optimistic in Purdy if he ends up getting the job. If I was a Wake Forest fan, just want to say that. Running back, there's a lot to be optimistic about. Damon Claiborne is a former 4-star for Wake Forest, had a great season last year. He is good size, 5'10", 195, had over 1,000 yards, caught 23 balls. His efficiency wasn't fantastic, 3.24 yards after contact per attempt, but he did have 45 missed tackles. He's a very sure back. He never fumbled. Did drop 2 of his targets, so that's not fantastic. But overall, Claiborne, he has one of the highest projections as far as workloads in the country. This is definitely not a weakness. They also get back Tate Carney, their second leading rusher. He's 6 feet 207, 339 yards. That was 4.1 yards per carry last year. 9 catches for him, 2.61 yards after contact per attempt. Definitely not as efficient as Claiborne, but he's a fine situational back if you need to press him into action. They also get back Ty Clark. He's now a sophomore. They bring in Jamario Clemens from Duquesne. I think these are just players that are going to play a situational role, if anything, behind Claiborne. The backfield, I think, is probably improved with a year. How much? We will see. It was not the best position for this team last year. Wide receiver. They're losing a lot. Horatio Fields, Taylor Moore, and Donovan Green, Deuce Alexander, Walker Merrill are all gone. Their only returner among the contributors from last year is Micah Mays Jr. He's now a redshirt sophomore, but he's one of those 4-stars that they previously brought in. 6'2", 196, caught 16 balls for 218 yards and 2 scores while playing out wide 82% of the time. Efficiency wasn't great, but there were a lot of mouths to feed last year. From there, they bring in a lot of transfers. Karate Brenson from Tennessee State, Carlos Hernandez from Washington State, Chris Barnes likewise, Sterling Burkhalter from Cincinnati, Reginald Vick from Virginia Union, and Sawyer Roccanelli from Montana. We'll spend more time on the contributors rather than the depth pieces. Brenson is 6'2", 215. He caught 71 balls for over 1,000 yards. And Brenson originally played at Ball State. He's not just some completely dusty FCS receiver. He had 3.2 yards per route, and he played at an actual FBS school beforehand. So I think he has a chance. Hernandez is going to be a locked-in starter. He's 6 feet, 192. He caught 31 balls for 397 yards and 5 scores last year while playing out wide 95% of the time, 1.48 yards per route, and that also came as just a sophomore. So he is going to start. Barnes only caught 2 balls in 3 games, probably a depth piece. Burkhalter, formerly of NC A&T, then goes to Cincinnati where he rides the bench mostly. His best years came at the FCS, so I think he's still probably going to be a bench piece. Reginald Vick is from a D2 school. I have no idea what you get out of him. And Roccanelli is 6'3", 208. He originally played with Washington, but he's had a real problem finding the field even at the FCS, so I don't think he really plays. Incumbents, behind Mays, you have Melvin, Grice. They played a combined 17 snaps last year. So I think if you're looking at your top 3 wide receivers based on projection, Micah Mays without a doubt, Carlos Hernandez without a doubt, Karate Brenson if he can just move over some of that production from the FCS to the ACC, which I think he can, largely because he's not working with a lot of competition. This is a very underwhelming receiver unit as you get to the depth pieces. From there, tight end, you lose Cameron Height, Harry Lodge. So that leaves Michael Frug as the most experienced tight end, and that was just 116 snaps with 2 catches. But Frug is 6'6", 243. For some reason, he has struggled a lot as a blocker at that size too. For being a 5th-year player, we just don't have a lot of experience to his name, so I'm not sure what you get out of Frug. They also had 3 transfers, so they may not need him. Enai Falai comes in from Utah Tech, Cameron Johnson from Vanderbilt, and Will Lorzel from South Alabama. All these guys have varying degrees of experience. Falai played with UMass for 3 years, and he barely got on the field there, just 200 snaps with UMass. So he goes down to the FCS. He played at Utah Tech, was horrible as a blocker, but as a receiver, 32 catches, 433 yards. That's very efficient, but it's at the FCS level. Not being able to play at UMass is not really a good sign. Johnson, I think, has the best chance to carve out a role previously with Vanderbilt. He's 6'5", 230, caught 11 passes. He's a pretty decent blocker. So overall, an average player from the SEC coming to the ACC. I think him and Frug have the best chance to play. Lorzel's only a redshirt freshman. He hasn't played a snap yet. So not sure what to make of him. Offensive line, they're losing their top 5. So basically everybody's a transfer. We'll try to break it down who's most likely to play, but some things will still shake out this summer. Left tackle, I think, is going to be Jacob Dennison. He might play right tackle. He's played both. He played at Ohio and mostly a right tackle, but dabbling at left. He allowed 10 pressures last year, no sacks or hits. He wasn't the best run blocker, and he only has 1 year of full-time starting experience, but Dennison's a good option. They also bring in Melvin Siani from Temple, another 1-year starter. He's primarily been a right tackle, also played a couple snaps at left. 17 pressures for him, solid pass blocker, but also a below-average run blocker. From there, they bring in Fa'aili Fa'amo from Washington State. Fa'amo, he is a 3-year starter, primarily a right tackle, good pass blocker, 12 pressures allowed and 2 sacks last year, but another below-average run blocker. I think you are looking at 2 of these 3 winning the tackle jobs. I do not know which ones. You could make a case for any of them. With that said, this is going to be a weird unit. We have a lot of good pass blockers and not a lot of good run blockers. So either the offensive coordinator in Ezel changes some stuff, or maybe this unit is a little pass heavier than we think. At guard, they do return 420 snaps from George Sell. He's now in his 6th season. 8 pressures allowed, 2 sacks for him, good pass blocking numbers. Another player he's actually a better run blocker than the others we mentioned. he's going to be one of their better offensive linemen on paper. The other guard, I think, is Roderick Tialavea from Washington State. 668 snaps from him. Tialavea he had 15 pressures allowed and 2 sacks. He's another good pass blocker, bad run blocker. So what do we get out of him? Lastly, if you're looking at a guard depth piece, Jamarian Kennedy comes in from Louisiana Tech, 348 snaps at an average level last year. He had 4 starts. He's an average player overall, but he's making a jump in competition, so I think he's more of a backup. At center, they bring in Devin Kilani from Washington State, another one-year starter, 17 pressures, 2 sacks, good pass blocking. He was an above-average run blocker. So run blocking is probably the bigger concern with this unit. They're actually all pretty good pass blockers, but you have a pair of good run blockers in George Sell and Kilani inside. You just need improvement from the tackles. Overall, I think this unit is probably taking a big step back. Wake Forest offensive line was awesome last year. It's just going to be hard to replace every starter, especially when basically all of the guys you're bringing in are from G5 level, and the ones that are P4 or P5, whatever you want to call it, are Washington State transfers, which is sort of like a P4 team with an asterisk. Defensively, off the edge, they lose their top 2. Jacine Davis is the main loss. So now you get back B.J. Williams. He's their main contributor who returns 351 snaps. Below average as a pass rusher, but he's a very good run defender. When you look at B.J. Williams, he's 273, so he kind of plays that 5 technique and will play inside out for this team. So it's not surprising given that profile. He's more of a run stuffer than an actual pass rusher off the edge. So to complement him, they bring in Gabe Kershke from Colorado State, Newer Gotkuth from Colorado State, Langston Hardy from UConn. Kershke played 648 snaps last year. He began his career as a walk-on with Wisconsin before traveling over to Colorado State, where going from walk-on to generating 41 pressures and 7 sacks with solid run defense numbers in a year is incredible. He also had 10 tackles for loss, 42 tackles. Kershke's going to start. Gotkuth got hurt last year, but I think he's another good candidate to start. If you look back to 2023, he had 38 pressures. That was actually over 2 years. And he was good as a run defender. He has a good chance to start. Hardy from UConn's a one-year starter, but he had 29 pressures with good run defense numbers. I mean, this pass rush unit was really bad last year. It was easily the worst unit on Wake Forest defense. There's a chance it's a lot better with these transfers. Inside, they lost their top 2 defensive tackles in Kevin Pointer, Bryce Ganius, but they do return 335 sacks from Zach Levichin. He's 6'3", 285. Levichin, he's been a good run defender at that size. Pass rush numbers are they're actually pretty decent. 6 pressures from the interior, given his snaps, is not bad. There should be some optimism that he takes a step forward this year. And again, he's a good player with solid size. They also add some transfers. Jaden Loving from Western Kentucky, Dallas Afalava from Idaho, and Brandon Smiley from Elon. Loving is originally an FCS guy, played at Bethune-Cookman, goes to Western Kentucky last year, appears in 5 games before getting hurt. Really good numbers at 317 pounds, very good run defender. Afalava has started 2 years in the FCS at 291. That's his weight. He took a step back last year, but he did miss a lot of tackles, 9 of them. That was 28% of his attempts. If he cleans that up, it could be a little better. Smiley is another player with a limited role in the FCS, pretty much just a rotational run stuffer from him. I think the pass rush is going to be a little better. The run defense up front, I'm not sure on. They do lose some players that were important, and a lot is going to come down to Levichin and how he can perform. Linebacker, they lose Branson Combs, but they return Dylan Hazen. He's a 2-year starter. Last year, he was 3rd on the team with 84 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 11 pressures. He's very good in the box, but he allowed an 84% completion percentage for 458 yards and 1 pick. He did do a good job keeping the catches in front of him, didn't allow any touchdowns, but that's just a lot to allow to running backs and tight ends and receivers. From there, Quincy Bryant, he is going to be an important piece to this defense. He was amazing in 2 starts, 363 snaps, very good run defender, very good in coverage. You just need to bring those snaps from 363 to maybe like 700. But right now, he was so good that he actually profiles as one of the better starters on defense. And again, what this model is trying to capture is what you've done, whether it's just a recruiting number or a few snaps. And then the model is trying to see what those numbers, players of your recruitment and what you've done so far, and what to expect moving forward. That's what we're trying to do. And based on where Bryant was as a recruit and what he's done so far, he projects to be a very good player for this team. Now we need to see it. If we don't, for some reason, they do bring in Frank Casano from Washington State. They also bring in Alec Marenko from Kansas State. Casano is more of a depth piece for the future, redshirt freshman with 14 snaps. Marenko played at Kansas State last year, but he actually didn't play. He couldn't really carve out a role, but some weird stuff for him. He got in a car accident. He started with New Mexico before that, but he was below average down in the G5, so that doesn't really inspire confidence. They also get back Aiden Hall, who played 326 snaps. Below average, but he did play a bit. Darius Jones played 10. So this position is good at the top. All we need to rely on is a step forward from Bryant, and really that is just playing more snaps. In the secondary, they lose about half of it. Evan Slocum, Jamari Glasgow, Sedarius Kelly. They do return their safeties. Nick Anderson is back. He is a multi-year starter with over 2,300 snaps the last 4 years, and he was awesome last year. 122 tackles, 71% completion for 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 2 PBUs. He has a chance to be the best defender on this defense. They also returned Devon Patterson. He was a first-time starter last year, good run defender with 74 tackles, but coverage, 82% completion for 316 yards and 3 touchdowns. That needs to improve. From there, they bring in Braylon Johnson from Virginia Tech. He played 286 snaps. And they also bring in Rashawn Tong. Johnson was a below-average player with Virginia Tech, but Tong, who played 302 snaps, he was very good on those. 35 tackles, good run defender, only allowed 3 completions. He could play in the slot. He could play at safety. I think there's 3 quality options at safety right now, and maybe you do end up kicking one into the slot. At corner, I'm not sure on this position. Jackson Mull is back. He played 448 snaps after transferring from Purdue. He was bad. His coverage needs work. He allowed 363 yards for 4 scores. There's more competition this year. He might get beat out. They also returned Zamari Stevenson, who played 291 snaps, good run defender, but a 75% completion for 253 yards. He's probably the main candidate for the slot. He's at least the most experienced slot on the team. But I think you might just look at transfers and move this unit around, especially with safety depth. The transfers, there are 5 of them. Karan Prunty from NC-A&T, Lardarius Webb Jr. from South Alabama, Ashad Williams from North Alabama, Jalen Edmond from Washington State, and Sasha Garcia from William & Mary. Weird group. Prunty, he's the NC-A&T transfer. This is a weird career. He began with Kansas as a starter in 2020, and he played well. 525 snaps, above average play with Kansas, and then he goes to the FCS where he plays even better. I don't know his life story, but I'm kind of just like, if you were a good starter with Kansas, why did you go to the FCS and stay there so long? So it's good to see him back up in the P4. I don't know why he was down there. He's not your normal NC-A&T transfer. Webb was originally a JUCO guy. Last year was his first year with South Alabama. He was elite in run defense, and his coverage was pretty good too. 68% completion for 376 yards, 2 scores, 6 PBUs. I think there's a good chance he plays. Then you get to Asad Williams from North Alabama, 510 snaps in a breakout season last year. He was below average in the 2 seasons prior, so that's a little bit of a concern for me. Then the depth guys, Edmond only played 15 snaps, the Washington State transfer. He's a depth piece for the future. Garcia was a 1-year starter in the FCS with William & Mary. I don't think we see a lot of him, but his completion percentage allowed was 40%. So there's a little bit to be ironed out with the corner position. Safety, I'm a little more confident in. But with corner, at least you can say there's a lot of potential players to get on the field. Kicker, special teams. Matthew Dennis is back. He's now in his 3rd year kicking. Perfect on extra points. He was 16 of 20 on field goals, but all of the misses occurred from 40+. He was 2 of 5 on 40+. He only attempted 1 beyond 50 yards, and he missed that too. So overall, we're talking about an average kicker to above average. He was 59th in total kicking efficiency last year. But the depth of this is he's an accurate kicker without a lot of range. So it's a good quality kicker for college, probably nothing really for the next level, and not a difference maker, but overall a quality kicker nonetheless. I think this Wake Forest team is a little bit worse on paper because of their roster, which shouldn't be terribly surprising given everyone that they are turning over with the coaching staff down to the roster. But let's look at schedule. As usual, that is the most important factor to what to expect from these teams. Who do you play? So with this team, you kind of have 2 FCS teams. Your non-con is very easy. You have Kennesaw State, who's a team that recently made the jump from FCS to FBS. Delaware is making that jump this year. They're playing in Conference USA. And then you have an actual FCS team in Western Carolina. So you got a lot of really low-level teams in your non-con, not to mention Oregon State. That is a road trip. So, I mean, you're going across the country. That team is remade, however. So, I mean, there's a real chance Wake Forest could be 4-0. I think 3-1 should be an expectation for this team in non-conference. Once you start looking at teams in the ACC, they dodge Clemson, Miami, and Louisville. At the top of the conference, you're facing Georgia Tech and SMU. Those are the clear teams you are going to be an underdog against. From there, there's a ton of the middle class. NC State, Virginia Tech, Florida State, Virginia, North Carolina, Duke. You don't face a lot of the complete bottom feeders. So really what this is going to come down to is, can this Wake Forest team pick off two of the other teams in the middle class? Right now we have Wake Forest just slightly behind most of these teams, but I think it's possible to absolutely get to a bowl because they're not far behind. You're going to be a favorite probably in your home games, at least some of them, and then you'll probably be a short dog when you have to make road trips to weird places. But overall, it's clearly a rebuilding team. I don't think this is the year for Wake Forest. They need a QB, a better one than Ashford and Purdy, but they're doing the right things, and Dickert has been a known program builder, so we will see what he can do in the future. But if you guys would like to see a team or anything like that, comments, feedbacks, please leave it below. Otherwise, thank you for watching. I appreciate you. We will see you next time, and good luck.